Hey folks, long time no see. Got some big news. I took on some work, pretty big work with Centerpoint Sabers for an upcoming run. By upcoming, I think he's going to be launching end of February, if I remember correctly. But I took on the Eco Chassis part of the run. So I have done all of the Eco Chassis for this. This is super rad. I'm a big Legends guy, pre-Disney stuff. And this is the Centerpoint Sabers Ben Skywalker. So, I mean, Luke's son, Luke and Mara, but to my knowledge, this has never been a proper, run from a company. I think there's been some one-offs way back in the day on the FX Sabers forum. But yeah, this is super cool, super rad. And I'm super stoked that I was able to contribute to this. I'm very glad that I reached out to him. And I'm pretty proud of the work that I did. And he seems to like it. So the Eco Chassis on this run will be shipping with your Sabers when he's ready to ship and take payment. The chassis is a 5-part system. His big request was that everything be fully removable on this outside of the emitter and underside of the emitter PCBs. Those will be either set into the set screw or glued into the underside of the emitter. But this is completely disassembleable. And the control box as well. That's just going to stay where it is. So you have some options with this. You can do as was intended, unthread the pommel back here. Nice chunky threads on this too. But you'll see the chassis. You can just slip it out. That's your Eco Chassis. I've got a little bit of Easter egg stuff on this. So part of it I can't show you because the name hasn't been unveiled yet, but there's your control box spring PCB, and that's what connects the control box to the chassis itself and makes this whole thing fully removable. So up there you have your Proffie, battery. I'm covering this part up right here because I did a sneaky and put the name of the Saber run on the chassis. And apologize, it is a little bit dark over here, but you can kind of make out some of the details. I've just kind of got some cooling fin looking things back here, some kind of like Death Star wall stuff, one of my regular greebly bits right there, and then right up here at the top, actually I'll grab the business card so you can have a reference. Centerpoint Sabers, obviously named after Centerpoint Station in Legends, but that is his logo, and this is what I've done on the chassis. Kind of same, a little bit different. Camera's not really going to pick it up as well as I would like it to, but you've got 5 circles surrounding his logo. The reason I did that as kind of like a little fun Easter egg for myself mostly is the Corellian system has 5 major planets. 5 major planets. And the 2 larger ones, that is what Centerpoint Station sits between. So I kind of have that signified in here with these 2 over here. But just kind of a fun little Easter egg for whoever cares about it, right? So going over the chassis itself, what you will need to install this. Actually, I'll break the whole thing down first. So pommel's already off. You can unthread the control box area. Again, nice meaty threads on this. You're left with the grenade and emitter. And that also unthreads. There's your emitter. Now on this, I used a CCsabers NPXL Lite connector, pogo pins for the emitter side because that doesn't get taken out usually. And then I've got a CCsabers V3 in the emitter right now. And then kind of going over the chassis itself, I order these from Smuggler's Outpost. They're the 3-spring chassis contacts. I've used them in several other builds besides this one, primarily in like my blaster builds, namely for the Mauser base, because it's really nice. It kind of lets you drop out the magazine, and I can use the spring connectors, and they'll snug up for the neopixel and for the dual switches, or for the switch and the speaker rather. On the other side of the chassis, again, I'm gonna cover up here by the battery box. You've got your battery contacts. These are included with the chassis. I made sure to ship them out with all of the other parts. Spring side negative, as Jeremy Puckett likes to say, and your positive. I put up here just because it was easier for me to do it that way because there's not a big wire channel behind the battery. So the way that I installed this and the way that I would recommend that everybody else does, take your 22 gauge wire for your positive, run it from the battery tab up to this blade side PCB, which is another CCsabers blade side PCB. Take one of the power pads on this, and wire that directly to the battery contact, and then wire your 22 gauge to the board. On the other positive pad, your negative for neopixel and your 30 gauge data line. That way you are using as little space underneath this as possible. It's a little bit snug, but it works perfectly. Personally, I use PTFE wire from Powerworks. They fit just fine. I believe the Remington wire is a little bit thinner, so you'll probably have a little bit more room than you think. And then back here, this is the Proffie version of the chassis. I do have a CFX version as well that will be shipping alongside this and the Saber itself. I think in the future, for time saving and cost especially, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the CFX chassis, and then I will just make a board adapter for it. That way you can just kind of pick whatever you want to use, and I'm not printing out a crap load of these chassis. Again, just time saving and cost. But with this, easy access to the Proffie. If you need to change anything via the micro SD card, you just pop it up. It's a nice snap fit down. Backside here, Smuggler's Outpost 28mm Dark Side Elite. I love these things. I put them in everything. But that's really all you need to install this. It's a super easy build. In the control box, you've got the 2 included brass hat tactiles. They are a little bit of a pain to wire. It's a little bit of a cram food job, but it's pretty simple. The way that I did it, I took some captain's tape and just kind of laid it down in the aluminum to help insulate it, and then set down where I was going to put my switches, wired to the negative on both, and then took an extra 30 gauge wire and wired that to the inside, if you can see that, of the spring connector that sits on the underside of the control box. And the way that I designed that, it is able for you to just kind of cram your finger in there and push it in. Then you can hold it down, and there are 2, I believe there's 632 grub screws. I made this so that you can just screw the control box adapter into the hilt, basically. I would use a little bit of E6000 on this control box, just to help keep it locked down in place. And then, yeah, I mean, super easy to set up. So with that, oh, and there is also, kind of make it out in there, I did put in a little speaker spacer, just to kind of keep, I was getting some rattles when I was doing the testing on this, so I just kind of threw that in there to completely X-nay that. But I'm going to throw all this back together and throw a battery in it. And I will actually show you something else that you can do, which is just kind of something that I decided to do. And you can put the entire saber back together, and it locks down nice. So you can unthread just the grenade and the emitter. I did take some pretty heavy inspiration from the way that Jeremy Puckett did his Luke Magic of Myth chassis, where you can just pop the battery in without having to take the entire chassis out. And for me, I mean, that's a little more important for me, for my personal preference. The other thing is this thing is loud. This is a very loud saber. But again, it's just kind of like my personal preference thing. I prefer having the easiest time taking batteries out, swapping them out, because I do a lot of conventions, I do a lot of shows. That extra time where I have to take the whole saber apart just to get a battery in, I like to avoid that if at all possible. You've got 2 set screws for the blade. I'm just going to chuck this in really quick. I mean, the blade holder is pretty tight for the blades that I use. All of my stuff comes from either KR Sabers or TCSS. Let's actually switch this to a blue.
Master August, I presume.
Nice blue blade on it. For the way that I wired it up, you guys can wire it up however you want to, your call. I made the top tactile is your activation, back is auxiliary. Auxiliary changes fonts, top turns it on, does all the fun stuff. But like I said, this thing it's loud. I love it. It's very well done, very well machined. Like I said, I'm super stoked to be on this run. Very happy with how it came out, and I'm very excited to hopefully do some more work with Centerpoint in the future. But that is the Centerpoint Sabers Ben Skywalker. And this open grub hole right here, there is going to be a thumb screw that is aligned for chassis retention. But with how snug it all is, you don't really need it. I will probably shave mine down so it's just enough to lock into those threads. Again, just personal preference. The easier it is to take everything apart if I need to, the better for me. These do not come weathered. I weathered this one myself. This is just some aluminum black and some steel wool. Pretty much same as that I always do. I think it came out pretty nice though. These raised edges on this emitter are so nice. It really adds some, I won't say much needed depth, but it gives it a really unique look. I really like how that came out. Speaking of the emitter, you do have, I'd say probably about 7/8 inch of blade depth on this as it sits, which for a thin neck, especially a thin neck that doesn't have an emitter cup for a recessed blade, that's pretty good. And it doesn't detract from the overall look of the saber. It just kind of flows really nicely together. But like I said, overall, I am very, very happy with these. And I know that he is as well. But yeah, I mean, this thing is just killer, absolutely killer. It feels really nice in the hand. I mean, I prefer a nice thinner hilt because like I don't have small hands, but at the same time, you know, it's a lot better than a big old chunky thing, right? But yeah, no, this thing is very sweet. It's currently being displayed with my Shadowfoil props, um, Hand of the Emperor, my Magic of Myth, and my Graflex, and some of my other NJO Sabers too. I've got a handful. But anyways, that has been my little project for the last while, getting these chassis done, getting them sent out, all printed. I did everything in-house for the chassis, and Centerpoint Sabers did all the actual saber work. Um, but like I said, you should expect to see these go up for sale mid-February, somewhere around there. He just received all the chassis. He's going to do his own installs for CFX. And if you want Proffies installed or CFX installed or whatever, and you don't get one of those pre-installed ones, feel free to reach out. I mean, these are really nice and easy to work on. And if, quite honestly, if you want to take it on yourself, I think this is a pretty easy one to start with, all things considered. But I will run through the parts list one more time before I log this video down. Slip the chassis back out. So, removable 18650. I use keep power. Everybody should. This is the Proffie version. The CFX version is obviously included with everything. These 3-pin contacts, I will throw a link for these down below. But again, I get these from Smuggler's Outpost, but you can get them from several other vendors. I've bought everything from Albert for the last like 3 years, so why change it? The 28 mil Smuggler's Outpost Darkside Elite. This is the CCsabers NPXL Lite blade connector. I don't believe that you can use the stock ones. I think they're just a little bit thicker on the outside diameter, but I could be wrong. I don't typically keep them stocked. These are just what I keep on hand. Because CCsabers is like 20 miles north of me, so the shipping is, you just can't beat it. The brass hat tactiles are included. The control box, that uses the male side of this connector, twist and swing on. CCsabers Lite neopixel connector, pogo side, and the CCsabers V3 NPXL connector. You can definitely use the stock pixel connectors. You can also, I believe, you can use the TCSS versions if you want one that's unlit. But the CCsabers V4 and the stock V4 will also fit just fine. But as far as I go, this is a done deal, and this is going to go right back on my shelf, and I will probably bring this out for show and tell at our next Star Wars Washington meet and greet, just because I like the fun sabers. But anyways, that is it from me on the Centerpoint Ben Skywalker. God, this thing is so sick. I'm so glad that I got one. And I'm, again, huge shout out to Centerpoint Sabers for working with me and for giving me the chance to work with him on this. It really means a lot, and I really hope that we get to do more work in the future. I know that he's got a couple of runs coming up that I can't discuss, but I have seen them, so I'm really excited for them. They all look super, super rad. But maybe we'll see in the future. I really hope I get the chance, because this was a dream to work on. He's a great guy. But anyway, I'm gushing now, but he's really locking down the Legends community for Sabers right now. in my opinion. I mean, there are other great creators that are doing Legends runs, but I mean, for these super niche, super weird kind of one-off type things, um, the handful that he's done, they're really the only ones that I've seen as a run. So that's exciting. But anyways, that is again Centerpoint Sabers. Everything that he does is handcrafted. And something else that's really cool about these, he does these metal master chassis that he does all the machining on. It's all machined by him. He does the install and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm into it because he uses lore accurate crystals. You know, for his Vistara, he used a ruby. For this one, he's using a sapphire. You know, it's just super rad. That attention to detail is on point. Um, and I'm really excited to see what the future brings. But anyways, again, that is the Centerpoint Sabers Ben Skywalker, and I am signing off on this one. So I will see you in the next video.